Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you know, Mondays are Modern Mondays here in Instant Deck Tech Land, and we have a pretty sweet one today. Today we're going to be looking at Black-White Hatebears, which recently took a Magic Online user by the name of Greasy to not one but two 5-0 finishes in competitive Modern League. So big congrats to Greasy on their finish with the deck. A quick reminder before we break it all down. If you enjoy this deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So Hatebears is a known thing in Modern. We see this deck kind of often, but we don't usually see it in black and white. Most often it's white plus colorless for Eldrazi, white plus green for things like Gaddock Teague and Noble Hierarchs, but just straight white-black, no Eldrazi, none of that stuff for Hatebears is not the most common color combination. So why Hatebears is a thing, this is a pretty unique build of Hatebears and gets some interesting stuff. So first off, this is an Ether Vial deck, and Ether Vial in this deck allows the deck to cheat on mana. It also makes its creatures uncounterable, and it allows you to take advantage of like Ghost Quarters and Tectonic Edges. You can use your lands for other things, even creature lands like Shambling Vents. If you're not spending 3 or 4 mana to cast a creature, you can use that mana to fire up a Shambling Vents or Ghost Quarter your opponent. So Ether Vial, super good, super important to this deck. So what are we vialing in? The deck has 30 creatures, and kind of the main combo of this deck is Disruption. So that's what this deck is built around, and it plays 4 copies of 2 really disruptive 2-drops. First off, you got Leonin Arbiter. I mentioned Ghost Quarter with Ether Vial is one of the upsides of playing Vial. You can use your lands for other things rather than casting creatures. Well, Ghost Quarter is absurd with Leonin Arbiter, which makes it so players have to pay 2 to search their library. So most of the time, you can just turn Ghost Quarter into Strip Mine because your opponent can't search for that basic land. But also Thalia just makes it really hard for opponents to cast spells. There's some really heavy spell decks in Modern. You see decks that are playing Serum Visions, Lightning Bolts, even Abrupt Decays, Terminates, all that stuff. Making all that stuff cost 1 more is a really big hindrance to a lot of decks, and Thalia does a great job of just slowing down the opponent while you're beating down with your bears, your 2/2s for 2, your 2/1 for 2. The deck also has a bit of a blink sub-theme, so Blade Splicer is just a super efficient creature. For 3 mana, you get a 1/1 plus a 3/3 with First Strike, sort of, as long as your Blade Splicer lives. But it gets really out of control when you throw things like Eldrazi Displacer and Flicker Wisp into the mix. So Displacer, you blink your Blade Splicer, get another 3/3. Flicker Wisp works the same way. Eldrazi Displacer you can also use to blink your opponent's creatures, get them out of the way, blink some of your other creatures to save them from a targeted removal spell. Flicker Wisp does the same thing. You can randomly hit your opponent's tokens, exile one of their things for end of turn. It's great with Ether Vial. If you vial it in at the end of your opponent's turn, then whatever permanent you blink is going to be gone until your opponent's next turn. If you vial it in at the end of your turn, you can hit your opponent's land. They're going to be down a land throughout their whole next turn because it doesn't come back into play until the next end step. And then we have kind of the card advantage engines for Dark Confidants, which is one of the biggest pulls into black. The deck has a pretty low average converted mana cost, so you're not hurting yourself too much, and this keeps you drawing more action, more bears, more disruption. And then a single 8/3 Scott of Passage, which can get turned into a 5/4 indestructible, which is pretty big for 3 mana. And it kind of has this burn out your opponent when your creatures die, and if your opponent gives you your creatures back instead of taking the 3 damage, that's fine with you too because you get your creature again. And then we have just some beaters. Kytheon, Hero of Akros, just a Savannah Alliance, may occasionally flip into a Planeswalker. Sierra Avenger works super well with Ether Vial. You put it into play and avoid that can't cast it on the first 3 turns thing, and you get a 3/3 flyer with Vigilance, which is a reasonable clock. And then a single Brimaz can kind of take over the game in some matchups, has a big butt so it avoids Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix, makes some 1/1s when it attacks or blocks. And then for removal, just 4 Path to Exiles. As far as the mana base, we have a bunch of dual lands, including a couple of Shambling Vents. The Caves of Koilos help with Eldrazi Displacer. Tech Edge, Ghost Quarters, we already talked about those. And a few planes. In the sideboard, we get a bunch more Hatebears for other situations. Yixid Jailer shuts down Dredge. Ethersworn Canonist shuts down Storm decks or any sort of combo deck that's playing a bunch of spells in each turn. Kitaki War's Wage is great against Affinity, giving a cumulative upkeep essentially, or an upkeep cost, not cumulative, to artifacts. And Burrington Forcetender, helpful against burn or anything that's using big red spells, can shut down Conflagrate from Dredge, Lightning Storm from Ad Nauseam. Also get some more removal in Dismember and a Fracturing Gust, which is not only a Shatter Storm, but it's also a hoser against Boggles because it hits enchantments as well, and it gains you some life at instant speed. And that is Black White Hatebears for Modern, and that's been our Instant Deck Tech for today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon.